Take it away.
Thank you very much. Hi, everybody. My name's Gwen, and I'm an alcoholic, and I'm very honored to be here today with all of you. I thank Tanya, Sheila, the entire Unity and Service Committee for inviting me to speak today. However, I have to say that the incident I'm about to share with you is more like an oh no moment rather than an aha moment. And my sobriety date is November 15, 2007. And after making a mess of my life, I arrived in the rooms of AA. I felt welcomed, accepted, and I stayed. I believed AA could work for me, and with the support of my sponsor, Higher Power, home group, and other members in the rooms, today I live a life of freedom. My sponsor read the big book with me and took me through AA's 12 steps. But she also explained that my work was not done, that the traditions and the concepts supplied me with tools that would enrich and support my recovery. And hey, if a three-legged stool is going to strengthen my recovery, it made sense to me that I would want that as the foundation. And I, like so many things in AA, was willing. And I started to learn about the traditions, really the first time I went through using the illustrated guide. And my sponsor shared that originally the traditions were the 12 points to assure our future. Wow, did that get my attention? That was heavy. What if AA hadn't been here the day I walked in and needed it and was willing to try it? It would not be pretty, I assure you. Well, tradition 10 is an important one to me, and the one where this incident I'm about to share really comes into play. AA has no opinion on outside issues, hence the AA name ought never to be drawn into public controversy. Well, this tradition tells me that since AA has no opinion on outside issues, it makes sense to me that outside issues should stay out of AA. And, but that isn't always the case. And lo and behold, one Friday I was at a meeting with the women that I sponsor. And following the meeting, there were 3 women, myself included, and my sponsee, standing in a corner, having that informal time of fellowship, which we affectionately call the meeting after the meeting. And I'll call my sponsee Kathy to maintain her anonymity and to allow some clarity in this story as it unfolds now. Well, lo and behold, I came into AA and stayed, but not everyone has. And I will tell you that that night was the last time Kathy came to an AA meeting. And this is what happened. We were having the meeting after the meeting, and one of the women started to chat about some upcoming travel that she had planned. And lo and behold, I couldn't believe it, but she let it fall right there in our laps. The pejorative political bias that suddenly became the elephant in the room. And Kathy, my sponsee, turned, walked away, walked out the door of that meeting, and as I said, has not been to AA since. Well, the other woman must have known something was wrong. And perhaps her words were inappropriate because she immediately apologized to me. And she said, "Oh, I may have hurt her feelings." Well, I did next, or what I didn't do more accurately, that is my oh no moment, is I just defaulted to my old natural behavior from my family of origin and I put on my best Minnesota smile, my Minnesota nice face, and pretended that everything was okay and tried to minimize this discomfort. I wasn't exactly sure what it was at that moment. But in hindsight, in unpacking this with my sponsor, my radar was up. I knew that this was not appropriate. Well, I ended up walking out the room and met up with Kathy in the parking lot. And lo and behold, she had had enough. She said, "I am so sick of these, blah, blah." And I'm pretending everything's all right. "Oh, I'm sure she didn't mean to hurt your feelings, blah, blah." That didn't matter. It was a violation of the AA traditions. Although it wasn't in the middle of an AA meeting, let's keep before the meeting and after the meeting safe. That's still not appropriate. So I've learned a lot since then. I learned from AA's practical program of action. And who would have thought that the service manual would help me become the woman I always wanted to be? But when unpacking that with my sponsor, she helped me understand that she actually suggested I read that essay on leadership, and that the learning came to me that leaders are often criticized. Wow, I don't like criticism, but yet I've learned to face my fear here. And if I want to be a leader, and we need leaders, I'm going to need to do that which is uncomfortable. Time and time again, AA has given me an action plan that helps me grow. And lo and behold, I have been able to be a little bit more comfortable with being uncomfortable, being more mature. I'm learning how to grow up, #adulting, and be true to myself, be true to these traditions that keeps AA here for those that are still to come. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, organization, or institution. Tradition 10 keeps the rooms of AA free from divisive opinions on these outside issues. And tradition 12 reminds me to place principles before personalities, which means I need to grow up and worry less about me and how I feel, my comfort, what people think, being liked, avoiding conflict, etc., and make tradition 1, our common welfare, my number one priority. The unifying principles of AA's traditions ensure AA's future. And in the days leading up to this conference, I reached out to Kathy via email and shared with her my learnings from that incident. And I got a call from her a couple of weeks ago. And to my surprise, it wasn't so much the politics that had kept her out of the rooms or, kind of said that was enough. But lo and behold, she was honest with me and told me that she was feeling some resentment toward her religious tradition, really had her feel uncomfortable and unwelcome in AA. She doesn't feel it's funny when an AA member describes themselves as recovering from her brand of spirituality. She feels offended when her religion is minimized or slammed. And that helps me understand her higher power is no more right or wrong than mine. I love it that AA's position on that allows all of us to be right. I want my words, my actions, my attitudes to reflect that in the rooms of AA. So Dr. Bob's farewell message reminds me to watch my tongue, and that if I use it, to use it with kindness, consideration, and tolerance. I want AA to be radically inclusive so that everyone who suffers from the disease of alcoholism feels welcome here. Today in Zoom, we have a different setting, but I still have the responsibility to keep my meetings safe and to ensure that some of these devices issues are not brought in the doors of Zoom or WebEx. And today I am responsible. I can cite the responsibility statement, but am I responsible? Do I put AA's unity over my need to be popular? I have learned to put the principles of AA's traditions over my own comfort zone. Traditions teach me it's not about me. Our common welfare is first. I'm responsible to not only extend the hand of AA to the alcoholic reaching out today, but by honoring the traditions to the best of my ability, one day at a time, I'm able to see that AA is available in the future for those who need it. I am incredibly honored to be here with such a group of men and women and everywhere on the spectrum that I love and respect and admire. And I thank you so much for your service. And that's all she wrote. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Gwen. Great job. And now, please help me welcome our next speaker, Roger W. from Vine Grove, Kentucky, speaking on anonymity and outside issues, rights versus responsibilities.
All right. I'm Roger, grateful alcoholic. And thank you for the loving invitation. This has been a great weekend. I've enjoyed most of it. Love the speakers. Just some great topics, and what a great vignette to segue into this, and especially the discussion that was going on in the break. Just really good stuff. I was thinking when I got this topic, I'm like, oh my goodness, there's like 3 traditions and 3 concepts, and where do you go with that? And it turns out that all of the speakers and all of the entire format has really been wrapped around how do you put all 36 principles into your life, and and take the spiritual lessons that they come with. So I guess we'll find out together which tangent I might go down. But really, what got me thinking was rights versus responsibilities, right? And how to tie that into, and we close with it each one of these sessions. I am responsible when anyone, anywhere reaches out for help. I want the hand of AA always to be there. And for that, I'm responsible. When we, Alcoholics Anonymous, adopted that statement at the National Convention in 1965, I was 2 months from being born. And I was that yet unborn alcoholic, destined to need Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm really grateful for the solution that people had. They came on. I'm really grateful for all of you everywhere that keep the lights on and the doors open, and allow Alcoholics Anonymous to exist. So on my first trip to Stepping Stones, which was probably close to 20 years ago, it's still just an exciting place to visit. If you've never been, but if you've ever been, and if you've ever been more than once, you understand the first visit was like a kid at a candy store. All of the different things that I was in that upstairs area where Lois had typed all the little labels on the pictures to explain to you what they were. And it's just a fascinating history. And I happened upon a letter. I couldn't find it the next time I went, but that time I found it from the panel 14 and panel 15 delegates. And it was dated April 24th, 1965. And it was to Bill and Lois. And it said the delegates of the 1965 General Service Conference wish to express love and gratitude to you for the long years of service you have devoted to our beloved cause. Indeed, but for you, Bob, many of us might not be sitting here today. And it's our hope that our fellowship will continue to benefit from your service for many years to come. And I had a moment in that upstairs room at Stepping Stones. As I read that letter, I was just touched because None of those delegates from panel 14 and 15 knew that 5 months later, after that conference, I would become an heir to their service, right? They didn't know. Certainly not for Bill, Bob, Lois, and the delegates, and a lot of people that came after. I wouldn't be here today. So I think I owe this debt of gratitude of today trying to be responsible to the best of my ability. So, of course, I think Don last night on that guy or somebody said, so I looked it up in the dictionary, what is responsibility? And one definition is that it's the state or fact of being accountable or to blame for something. So I'm accountable for how I practice these principles in my affairs. I'm accountable for what I do with this gift that you've given me. If I don't accept the solution or I don't follow directions, I'm to blame or I'm responsible. I'm to blame if I let my rights get in the way of our primary purpose of carrying the AA message. And I love what Chris said at the break during that discussion is like asserting his rights versus being responsible. And how that is not really fitting in our primary purpose. So, and then what are my rights? So I looked up a definition of, and it said it was a moral or legal entitlement to have or to obtain something or to act in a certain way. So a right is an entitlement. I'm entitled to have something. I'm entitled to act a certain way. I think I'm entitled to a safe meeting place. We've talked a lot about that lately. I'm entitled to maintain as much anonymity as I wish, right? So, but what if you don't respect that right? What if you're not responsible for protecting my rights, anonymity, my right to be safe in an AA meeting, getting the message? And so that's what I've been thinking about around this topic. And what I love about the traditions is they're not rules, they're not laws, they're not guidelines. They're based on spiritual principles. They have no authority to be enforced. And what I hate about the traditions is that they're not rules or laws. They're guidelines. And when you're in violation of them, I don't like it, at least in my opinion, because I have no authority to enforce them and explain to you how wrong you are. I have to accept the behavior of everybody, and possibly that has an impact on my rights. So I have to take responsibility for what I can change, my attitude, my reaction to life on life's terms. We got some rights in our concepts. So that's really what I first thought about when I read this topic is like concepts 3, 4, and 5, the right of decision, right of participation, the right of appeal. They're spiritual principles. We use them in Alcoholics Anonymous to ensure that every voice has the right to be heard, including the minority. There's been some great vignettes. I loved Beth's story last night, or it was later here than it was there. So I'm sure it was afternoon there. But concept 4, the right of participation. I have a right to participate in Alcoholics Anonymous. Tradition 3 says that I'm a member of Alcoholics Anonymous if I say so. So if I'm a member, I have the right, and now I have the right of participation. And some of the things I've heard this, I don't have to have a sponsor. I don't have to sponsor others. I don't really have to attend AA meetings to say I'm a member of AA. I don't have to have a home group. I don't have to work the steps. I don't have to make the coffee, set up the chairs. Membership, the bar is kind of low. It says I have a right to be an AA member if I say so. And then I can be a terrible AA member and a bad example. And I certainly have been. The requirement for a spiritual awakening is a little bit different. The bar is much higher. I have to work the steps. I have to do all those things. It'd be a good idea if I have a sponsor and I sponsor others and I have a home group. That's the success. That's the key to success that you told me worked for you. I tried it. It worked for me. And so that's what I tell people is like, you can be a member And I have, if you could find me on a spiritually unfit day, I might be telling you everything wrong with Alcoholics Anonymous. What the board did wrong, what the conference was wrong about in a decision, what my home group was wrong about. I've done all that stuff. But at the end of the day, I'm still a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. I've been a real complainer. I can tell you how terrible AA is, how it's full of sick people. I can be a bad example. I can walk around and be a terrible example of Alcoholics Anonymous, but I have a right to be a member. So what's my responsibility as a member of Alcoholics Anonymous? If I'm a member of something, then I have to participate in it. At least that's the way I've been sponsored into AA. I don't have to have the responsibility of participation until I accept it. I have the right of participation, but the responsibility, I have to accept responsibility. Once I do, then I get to be a member of AA. A whole new world opens up. It's what attracted me to general service in the first place. I went to my first area assembly as the liaison for the International Young People's Conference. And as a non-voting member at an election assembly, I got to help collect the ballots. And they allowed me the right of participation right from the get-go. And I sat and I had lunch with people who I loved. And I thought, this room is just full of some really good AA, some really good sobriety. These guys, I help these guys. And I want to be a part of it. And I was included. I get to participate in a group. Back in my home group, I get to help form the collective conscience of just like the other speakers. Like my group does some things that are very wrong, and they won't listen to me. So my voice is one voice among many, just like it is in AA everywhere. So the way I get to be a part of that is and take responsibility for that is to listen and to learn, to share. I get one voice, I get one vote. And then I apply principles to whatever we're talking about. And groups, just like the individual, groups have the right of participation too. That's what the concept's talking about. They only have the responsibility to participate if they accept it. So I believe that the group that accepts their responsibility to participate, they're much better off. They seem to be more effective in carrying out our purpose and carrying the AA message, those who participate. My personal relationships, I have an inherent right to create a relationship with my family or with my friends. But if I don't accept the responsibility for that relationship, the right is irrelevant. I don't get to have a relationship. So my group's right to participate in AA, it's important to take the responsibility to accept that. It seems to me that most groups haven't accepted it. It seems I base that on the number of groups in our area and areas that I've lived in that participate in general service, that participate in Seven Tradition and the Spirit Life contributing to our services. In the Concept 1 essay, Bill says that the fellowship took responsibility for AA at the 1955 International Convention. But if more than half of all groups don't participate in the process, did they really accept responsibility, or was that symbolic? This particular workshop here this weekend is a huge success. I think that the people, we are a minority of AA membership that are participating. There are probably registered groups that are really AA meetings, but I think that there are some groups that don't know the benefit of full participation. They don't, just like an individual. When I came to AA, for 18 months, not drinking and going to meetings, find out where the next conference or party was all I really did. And at 18 months, when I tried to drive my car off the cliff and end it and fire my higher power and scream that I quit AA, that was it, right? When I when I finally, in desperation, came back to AA without taking a drink because a member wouldn't leave me alone and carried the message to me, I got busy and I found out that there's more to, and I think a lot of groups are that way. They don't know that there's more to life than just than holding AA meetings, and that they have a full right of participation in a really big worldwide fellowship. And that was the same thing I was with as an individual. I didn't know that there was more to AA than not drink and go to meetings. One of the analogies that I like to use is, did you ever have a job where the boss really didn't have a clue what was going on inside of their own organization? They really didn't know what was going on at the front line where the customer was. Well, if we have an upside down triangle and the groups are on top, they're the boss, they're in charge, they have final responsibility and ultimate authority for services, and they don't choose to know what's going on inside their own organization, that's really effectively what we have in AA, is about half or more of the boss has no idea what's going on in their own organization. But yet they have ultimately for world services. Half the boss is completely disconnected, but they have a delegate that they don't know that's serving their. So I think that a big responsibility comes with the right of participation, and it's no wonder that there's a conflict between the boards and the groups. I believe that's our trusted servants really know what the groups want. They really do. But if we're not talking, then they have to guess what it is that those groups need as far as services go. The voices they hear are our voices, right? General service people who aren't really reflecting half that don't care. They hear when we don't agree with their actions. They hear about that. My first DCM experience, I used the 4th edition Big Book to get people's attention, and it had an effect, right? All you got to do is like just drop it. It might be taking your favorite story out, and people get interested and passionate about the Big Book. That's so much more fun to argue about than matters of policy and finance and stuff. So that really worked, but it didn't seem to have much of a long-lasting impact for getting people into service. There might have been a few that were turned on and like me, fell in love with it and just became a service geek, really. But it didn't. So, in hindsight, I'm not sure. Literature seems to be a thing that we love to talk about. It might not be the best tool to get the groups involved. Explaining what general service is and why you should care, literature is just low-hanging fruit. It's an easy example. What does general service do? And we might say, well, they help publish the literature and provide the literature that your group needs to carry the message. Responsible for the integrity of the message through our literature. And so now, we got a service sponsor or somebody that's into service, and they hear that and they get a good idea, and they go through the process of putting it on the agenda through their area or district. And as I counted the last 2 years to try to make this point, over 90% of agenda items that were on the matrix that were submitted, not that were put on the agenda, but that were submitted from the fellowship, over 90% were to either create a piece of literature or to tweak a piece of literature that we already have. So I call it, our pet rock or our little thing. We love to use literature to prove points. I do. When I feel it's wrong and I can prove it through our literature. But the same literature, we sure do like to tweak and change a lot. So I try to, instead of using those examples, they're great examples of what general service does and what AAWS does as a publishing corporation. But there's also an awful lot of services. We heard in a great workshop just before this about public information, CPC. what our central offices do. There's so much more. And so what I try to communicate is the why. Why should you take responsibility? Why should you exercise your right of participation? And it's the groups. It's you. The groups set the policy, the direction, the culture of Alcoholics Anonymous. Service trusted servants can support our efforts to do 12-step work, because that's one thing that I notice a lot of people say things. I don't think that they mean it, but I want to be clear. I don't think that the General Service Office or my central office does 12-step work. They make 12-step work possible for us, the members do the 12-step work. They give us tools, set the conditions so that it can be successful through public information, treatment, corrections, work, those kind of things. Set the conditions so that us members of groups can do that work. Concept 5. I love concept 5 because I'm a complainer. I have a right of appeal. And if things don't go my way, I'm going to exercise my right of appeal. And usually that means I'm going to rehash the same points. I'm going to say it a little bit more eloquently so that this time you understand what I really mean and how right I am. Because, you know, if you would just do what I, the director, say, the world would be so much better, right? But I have heard some great stuff about the minority voice, and I love it. It seems that I'm the minority voice a lot more often than I ever thought I would be. And I love what Jennifer said this morning, at least earlier in the session, about speaking truth. Like, I have to speak my truth. And what I've learned recently the hard way is I have to speak my truth in love. The message is a lot better received when I'm able to listen first and understand all points of view, and then speak what I think is the spiritual principles and the right thing. So I have a responsibility regarding the right of appeal. I have that responsibility to listen to you, to understand, to apply the principles. And then when I believe that a majority is moving in a direction that I think is an error, then I absolutely have to have the courage of conviction and the responsibility to communicate that. But most importantly, the why I think that way. And why I think in our principles, in pursuit of carrying the message and fulfilling our primary purpose, I think the way I do. And most of our loving debates are really all about seeing things differently, right? We had some great discussions at the General Service conferences that I attended as a Panel 68 delegate. And it was fascinating for me to learn that people saw things differently. It was shocking at times that they didn't see it my way. But some of the most fascinating things that we discussed, I would see delegates, staff members, and trustees come to the microphone with really good points on both sides of an issue. And assuming I think there's more than two sides to any issue, but in this particular, in favor or opposed to the recommendation. And it was just fascinating to me to understand that that we all want the very best for Alcoholics Anonymous. We just all didn't see the decision the same way as to achieve that goal. So I got a responsibility to participate in an informed group conscience up front and not withhold some dramatic piece of information for the appeal so that I can sway the audience and get my ego stroked because I had information. If I have information, we do an awful lot of very long, loving debates about issues. And that's the time to rehash that. It ought to be the exception rather than the rule, to have new information in an appeal that we hadn't discussed and and already considered prior to that. I think when I do that, if I complain about everything and I appeal everything, it's like the boy that cried wolf. It's my credibility is really at stake. I'm considered a complainer, and later on in service, maybe not that particular issue, but later on in service, I could be considered that guy. That guy. Okay, so he's always going to oppose everything. So so I have to be a little bit judicious and responsible with that right. You know, I can't really like throw it around all the time. Like I said, I'm really good at speaking my truth. But as what I was told after the 69th General Service Conference, as I was sharing with my service sponsor, it's like, but you have to speak it in love, right? And I didn't do that. Or at least I didn't feel comfortable with the way that I did that. I did the best I could to appeal something that I felt very strongly about. But I didn't do it with love. And at the end of the day, I really needed to go back and make amends to the conference, because I really felt like I spoke out, like my mouth got ahead of my heart. And that's happened before. Like I've heard it in report backs. It's we get very passionate about what we love Alcoholics Anonymous. I spent that conference on 2 committees. In Archives Committee, I was 8-1. I was the only minority voice that felt a certain way. And in my Grapevine Committee, for which I was the chair, so I had to balance my right of participation with the responsibility to make sure voice is heard. I felt I was standing solid on principles, but I was the committee was 7-2 against my way of thinking. And that's a very interesting thing to do. But what we do in Alcoholics Anonymous is we get up and we give that report as the chairperson of that conference, and we say the committee decided, right? And because when the group conscience is done, when the debate is over and the dust is settled, my job is to support the group conscience. And I can tell you today that every decision that I felt so strongly about in the middle of that, there's no decision that we made that's going to break Alcoholics Anonymous. So right now, I'm 100% on board to try, how can I help us be successful in executing that decision? That's my responsibility. Is the appeal's over, and now we've made a decision, and I was there, and I could successfully report back. It was 75% of the conference wanted to go this route, and I'm a member of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I'm going with them. I'm going with you. How can I help? If down the road, I mean, we're pretty self-correcting. If down the road we decide that a different decision is now appropriate, then we'll do that. You know, we have a conference process that's going to, that will take that on. I mean, if you've ever read through some of the old conference final reports, we got a lot of unsettled issues that we talk about over and over and over again. Because I think that really, on any given day, 2/3 of us don't agree with one direction or the other. It's just difficult stuff. And that's the kind of discussions that we were having at the break that I loved, right? About outside issues, which I want to get to real quick. Concept 3, right of decision. I have a right to decide. We don't instruct our delegates. We don't instruct DCMs. I have a responsibility that comes with this right. Making a decision is a responsibility, but I have a responsibility to go back to the group who I am directly responsible to, those that I serve, and tell them what happened, why I changed my mind, and live with that. And if they don't like it, they can elect better next time or something, right? But if you ask me to serve Alcoholics Anonymous, you give me a job, I get the responsibility. You give me the authority to do the job. That's our principles. I've been very fortunate that I've never served any service entity where I felt like I was instructed, ever. I learned that kind of early. As a delegate, I knew the conscience of my area. I write a decision. If I was presented new information, I would report that. There's a lot of new information. Like if you've been to a group conscience and you go to the district meeting, you hear a lot of new information. And if it's timely and you're not going to go ask your group as a GSR, you have that responsibility to make the best decision for AA. We've had some issues in our area where our area felt strongly about an issue and instructed a delegate. He was put in a position where he was told to vote specifically one way about a little issue about some buses in San Diego, some money to pay for the buses. You might have heard about it. I don't know. It was, but he was basically sent to the conference instructed by our area body, by past delegates, and many people that were involved in general service that felt very strongly about the issue. But the problem was that they felt very strongly, but they weren't fully informed. They didn't have the benefit of the full conference discussion. They didn't have the more information that you get when you show up and you have these loving debates. They were just bad, and they wanted to do something, and they were pretty sure they knew what they should do with about half of the information. So they instructed the delegate, and they elected him. They delegated the job, and then basically micromanaged his authority. And what happened was he didn't comply with the instructions. And he came back and he was directly responsible, and he gave a report back. And they were madder. And it caused quite a rift in our area that took several years to heal. Ultimately, it was the catalyst that had the area body decide to not allow past delegates in our area a voice or a vote at assemblies. And most delegates, past delegates, me included, are completely fine with that because, as Jennifer was talking about, I have a GSR. I have a home group, and so I have a voice in Alcoholics Anonymous. And I don't need to be in a special class where I have a say-so as a past delegate. But his right of decision came with the responsibility. In my mind, he took he was responsible, and he reported back. I think we work better together with an open mind and an open heart. So part of the topic is anonymity and outside issues. And I mentioned earlier, I have a right to as much anonymity as I wish to have. And a newcomer has a right to as much anonymity as they wish to have. So, because I have a right, and some people can violate my rights, what do I do about that? By the way, I love the pin, and I wore that to my group my home group on Friday, and they couldn't see what it said. I told them I was a sheriff and I was the traditions police now. I've been deputized by the people who are putting this conference on. They didn't think it was funny, and they didn't think I had any authority now that I did. But what do I do if you don't respect the right that I have to my anonymity? They don't take their responsibility seriously. Maybe they don't know the traditions, and maybe they don't care. I've seen both. I have to accept the things I cannot change. I have to have the courage to change the things I can. And what I think I can change is to explain the why of anonymity. Any chance that I get to explain, it's just so much more well received than you can't do that. That's a violation of our traditions. To try to, if I can have a conversation and explain the why, I have a responsibility to practice anonymity and to protect your anonymity. When I first got this topic, I was thinking about social media. I think that's sort of a hot topic. And what about subtle online messages like posting a picture of my sobriety coin or just a number like for the number of years that I'm sober. And what I think about that is does it have a point? Is it really necessary? Is it really practicing a genuine humility? And I think that's an individual thing for people to answer. For me, I choose to not, I don't think it has a point. And I don't do it. Am I responsible? I mean, that's just where I draw the line. So when I first got sober, I wanted to shout it from the rooftops, right? Alcoholics Anonymous saved a hopeless drunk like me. You should try it. Everybody should try it. It's awesome. It's really cool. I think you need it. By the way, I drank with you, and you need to go to Alcoholics Anonymous. And I'm really grateful that social media didn't exist back then. I'd probably be doing the same thing that I see happen today. I'd be out there ignorant of our tradition of anonymity, oblivious that anonymous is half of our name, and I would just be trying to save everybody instead of just doing it without social media and without the internet. So I think we all have a right, but getting everyone to take the responsibility is a real challenge, right? I think that conferences like this, where we have shared experience, is awesome. I hope that there's some first time. This is my first time at this conference, but I really hope that there's some first time people that are new to service of any kind that are experiencing this, because like this is like there's just a lot of people from a lot of places that have a lot of experience, and this is a great place to learn. So I hope that there's some new people. I hope it's not just all a bunch of veteran general service people, but there's a lot of people I respect here, and I consider mentors and experts, and people I would reach out to with questions that I had. But the why of anonymity is genuine humility. The conclusion of all our 12 points of tradition is that it says, finally, we of Alcoholics Anonymous believe that the principle of anonymity has an immense spiritual significance. That's the why. That's what we as trusted servants have to lovingly explain and teach to other people, so that we can maintain the immense spiritual significance of humility. Like, it's so that our great blessings might not spoil us. It's so that we remember it's grace, right? It's not anything I did to deserve to be sober. It's just, grace. And I'm following directions that you gave me that somebody else figured out. Anonymity is more than just putting my name and face as an AA member out in the public. It's pretty clear. Anonymity at the public level, 100%. That's clear. But when I think about genuine humility is the principle, I have to question my motives when I try to dance around the topic at the public level. Do I want credit for my great blessings, or do I want to carry the AA message? And for the AA message to be the most effective, it has to be clearly the AA message. I've been involved in some other organizations where the message is a recovery message, right? So that's fine. It has its place. It has a purpose, but I'm carrying the AA message, and I want to be clear about the AA message. A generic message so that I can announce my own recovery really doesn't seem to fulfill what our primary purpose is, to help let people who suffer from alcoholism know that Alcoholics Anonymous can help. So I've taken some training to learn how to share a recovery message that's open and supports that there are many pathways to recovery, and that's true. We don't have a monopoly on the steps of recovery from alcoholism. We certainly don't claim a solution for problems other than alcoholism. So there's really nothing wrong with that message. It's, however, in my experience, not the AA message. It's a different message of recovery. So as an AA member today, I want to be very clear. I want to also make sure that I remain anonymous in the spirit of humility. that I'm not just another, I'm just another bozo on the bus, right? I'm just another alcoholic trying to not drink today and trying to help you. And I don't need any credibility. I don't need to be famous for being sober. I don't need to be famous for having years of sobriety. I got some of those great blessings. I got a car. I got a nice house. I got clothes. I can take a vacation or go out to eat. All a gift. It's all grace. I really can't boast about any of that stuff. It's just happens to be the life that I get to live today. And back in step 3, I asked God to take away my difficulties so that I can bear witness to him, not to me. In step 7, I asked him to remove from me all the defects of character that stand in the way of my usefulness. So the motive here is really to be useful. And there doesn't seem to be any good reason for me to brag about my sobriety or my membership in AA at the public level. So also, anonymity is a commitment to the new person. And like I said, new people might not understand anonymity, and we have to share the why. We're responsible for that, to explain why we're anonymous. This is a great workshop to learn why we're anonymous, and to read our literature and to get a better foundation of the why. There's a lot of long-timers, sober members of Alcoholics Anonymous that choose to draw the line on anonymity in a very different place than where I choose to draw it. And what's interesting is that's the great freedom we have in AA. What I love about the traditions is they're not rules. And what I hate about the traditions sometimes is they're not rules. But our experiences taught us that great freedom is really essential to what we do. We don't have any laws. We don't have any rules. Our responsibility is just the why, to help people understand the why and draw their own conclusion, where to put that line, where's that line for you? It's probably going to be different. I just pray that collectively we don't stray so far that the individual can't get sober or the group can't fulfill their primary purpose. That's really it. So, but I want to say something, and I heard this in the workshop earlier. It was great about anonymity at the personal level. And I think it's a big, big responsibility. I was at the National AA Technology Workshop we hosted out here last year in Bowling Green, Kentucky, and standing around with a group of guys outside, I heard a low-tech solution that I thought was just wonderful. And I thought, well, there's probably no more powerful CPC tool in the world than, if you believe our statistics, which are practically impossible to keep updated or accurate, there's roughly 1.5 million AA members in the United States and Canada, I think. I didn't look them up, but I think that's rough. Even if you believe, I mean, there's a lot of people in AA. And if each of us would choose a professional that we already know and have a relationship with, a doctor or a dentist, our boss or employer, a member of the clergy, somebody we already know, we don't have to go out of our way at all. About once a month or every other month, we share our story of our recovery from alcoholism through Alcoholics Anonymous. It's potentially the most powerful CPC tool that we have. I think it's better than mailings. I think it's better than having workshops, sending emails, or even an effective LinkedIn page. It's bigger than all of that. If, like, that's 1.5 million people a month that hear about Alcoholics Anonymous. So if we all committed to this one simple act, we could, with very little effort, reach millions of professionals and share that AA is here, how to find us, that it actually works, and then they have a really powerful example in their life. I can't think of a better way to do 12-step work, and to not be anonymous at the individual personal level, to sacrifice my own anonymity at the personal level so that I can carry the message. So that's my goal today. I've taken that on. I have a dentist appointment next month, and I'm stating this publicly so that I can try to be held accountable to how that go. And I'm going to start there and see what happens. And so if there's a call to action at all, I mean, that's just, I haven't done that yet. I thought it was a great concept, and I wanted to share that with a lot of people that might think it's a good idea too, and encourage you to try it. So with that, I want to get to outside issues, which I saved for last because I thought, well, this is going to be controversial. And if it is, there's an ask it basket next. So tradition 10, no AA group or member should ever in such a way as to implicate AA express any opinion on outside controversial issues, particularly those of politics, alcohol reform, or sectarian religion. The Alcoholics Anonymous groups oppose no one. Concerning such matters, they can express no views, whatever. Which is interesting language. Aside from the word should, which is kind of like the way our traditions go, it's pretty strong. The Alcoholics Anonymous groups oppose no one. Concerning such matters, they can express no views, whatever. It doesn't sound suggestive to me. It sounds pretty serious. Bill wrote in 1953, in our own times, we've seen millions die in political and economic wars, often spurred by religious and racial differences. We live in the imminent possibility of a fresh Holocaust to determine how men shall be governed, and how the products of nature and toil shall be divided among them. And when I read that in the 12 and 12, I thought, wow, that's like a timeless statement. And you could apply that at any time in history, particularly now. But it also says that is the spiritual climate in which AA was born, and by God's grace has nevertheless flourished. Right? This thing was born in post-World War I, just coming out of Prohibition. Lots of outside issues floating around. This thing survived through World War II, and in fact flourished through that period of time to the point where we couldn't hardly keep making the big book with the paper rations. And that's a story I love to talk about, but for another time. But there seems to be a lot of outside issues right now, and a colossus of communication to talk about it. People in the world today seem more divided and less willing to change than ever before, it seems. And as a citizen, as an individual sober member of society, I have a right to actively participate in our political process. As an individual member, I have a right to practice any religion or none at all. And I have a right to share that freely and without judgment, much like the vignette that we just heard about. But I also have a responsibility that Alcoholics Anonymous doesn't enter any public controversy. I have the responsibility to make sure that Alcoholics Anonymous is open to everybody, and it's not implicated as part of any sectarian religion. And the why to that, always getting back to we have to explain the why when we're teaching people about our principle. And the simple why for this principle, this tradition for me is our primary purpose, right? In the 12 and 12 on page 177, it says, we conceive the survival and spread of Alcoholics Anonymous to be something of far greater importance than the weight we could collectively throw back any other cause. I met people recently that felt like there were causes that were more important to them. And that's okay. If you're a member of Alcoholics Anonymous and you feel that way, I just say please don't implicate Alcoholics Anonymous or the work that we're trying to do in our primary purpose. We're called not to ever in such a way implicate AA to express an opinion on any of these topics. It means that I have the responsibility to keep things out of Alcoholics Anonymous. I love Don's example, and I love the vignette right before this talk about gavel, gavel, and in the parking lot, and the meeting after the meeting. Before people, newcomers, are watching our behavior. Our opinion that we express on outside issues, anywhere we're known to be an AA member, can impact our ability to carry the message. It can impact my ability to carry the message. So if you're an AA trusted servant who's politically active, I think you have to decide how much right you want to practice and how much responsibility you feel for the survival and spread of Alcoholics Anonymous. It's okay to walk into an AA meeting wearing whatever you want, but I have to ask myself, is it okay for me to come in wearing some billboard on my t-shirt that's political in nature or divisive? I was recently in a Zoom AA meeting I was invited to. And the culture of the location where the meeting was, it was okay for this guy to have a particular flag tacked up behind him on the wall in his own home. That raised an interesting question to me. He has every right to put symbols in his own home, but is it necessary to put it on the camera of the Zoom meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous? And that's really his choice, but it's my job to help explain the why of our tradition and how that might not be inclusive, like we were talking about earlier. It's not okay for me to do that, because my interpretation of this tradition is that I try to stay as neutral publicly as possible, and to be aware that how I communicate things might be perceived. It might be a barrier, right? We have accessibility committees, pretty much just emerging, where we're thinking about these kind of things. And if I create an accessibility to the message issue, I think that I'm not fulfilling my primary purpose. It closes the door of my usefulness. Think about social media here too, right? So most of my social media friends and followers, if I have any followers, I'm not much into social media. I'm on there from time to time. But most of the people that I know are in Alcoholics Anonymous over the years. And so they know that I am an AA member. So if I were to make controversial statements, that may be tied to Alcoholics Anonymous or my membership. And I think that's like preamble to prayer. Certainly Tradition 10 applies, but as Don and Gwen were talking about, it also applies outside of that, right? It has an effect if you care about our primary purpose. I've worked for the government. I served in the military for 30 years. So if anybody's seen me before, right? So the hair and the beard and all that stuff is like, it's just a phase veterans go through. I'll get over it. So I just retired, but being apolitical is sort of a way of life in uniform service. So I think I might have an advantage there. But also something that we do every year is equal opportunity training. And there's a phrase I learned there called perception is reality, right? You don't need to have sexually harassed somebody. If the perception is that you did it, then it's a problem, right? And so applying this tradition to my life, intention really doesn't matter. If others or the public perceives my actions implicate AA, then I think I need to take a look at my behavior, right? We have to sacrifice some of our rights to take responsibility for, to quote the 12 and 12, for the survival and spread of Alcoholics Anonymous. Right after that, it says, since recovery from alcoholism is life itself to us, it's imperative that we preserve in full strength our means of survival. So that's what it is, of far greater importance than my position on any other outside issue is to fulfill my primary purpose as a member of Alcoholics Anonymous, and to carry the message to those that suffer, because I think that is, we can help when nobody else can. Like, that's a gift that I've been given, and it's a responsibility that God gave me that, to me, is more paramount than any other cause that I can put my efforts and energies into. At least that's where I am today. So I want to thank the committee for giving me such a dynamic topic and so much to think about over the last months. It's led me to reflect deeply on rights versus responsibilities. I have a right to be in a safe environment in an AA meeting, and so do you. But I have a responsibility to create a safe environment for other people that are attending AA. I have a right to my opinion. I have a responsibility to listen respectfully to everybody else's opinion. I got a right to my higher power, and but I have a responsibility to allow everybody else to have a different higher power or none at all. It's really not my business. So what I guess if I could like boil it down, rights to me are like grace. It's like I get them without earning them, like it's an entitlement. Responsibility is like choosing to take the action. So it's like working the steps. Like, you gave me a solution that was like grace. And then I decided, after doing it my way for a while, that I would work these steps and I would take these actions that you were telling me to do. And sometimes I have to sacrifice my rights. Like when I got sober, I had to give up my way. When I choose to be responsible, I get the whole gift, like not just not drinking and going to meetings. I get what our book describes as beyond my wildest dreams. So today I choose to be responsible the best I can. I love that the responsibility declaration that we're closing with was first appeared the year I was born in 1965. And I feel a special connection to that, so I choose to try to live by the declaration that I am responsible when anyone anywhere reaches out for help. I want the hand of AA always to be there, and for that, I'm responsible. So thank you to the committee, and thank you guys for listening. Look, really enjoying the weekend, and if I said anything you disagree with, there's an Ask It basket next.